From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Friday, the 5th of August 2022. Good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about the sentencing of American basketball star Brittney Griner. We'll also be discussing three of today's other important stories and discussing just why ex-German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder is continually in the news and continually under fire. But first, the case of Brittney Griner. Yesterday, American basketball star Brittney Griner was sentenced to 9 years in prison by a Russian court after being found guilty of possession of cannabis oil, something she pleaded guilty to but said was an honest mistake. The US is seeking a prisoner exchange, and President Joe Biden has described the sentence as unacceptable and called on Russia to release her immediately so she can be with her wife, loved ones, friends and teammates. The 31-year-old women's NBA star, who plays for the Phoenix Mercury and is a double Olympic gold medalist, had gone to Russia to play club basketball during the off-season. She was arrested in mid-February this year in a Moscow airport after a vape cartridge containing cannabis oil was found in her luggage. As one of the best female basketballers in the world, her case was already a high-profile one. But in the words of Reuters, her case was thrown into the geopolitical maelstrom triggered by Putin's invasion of Ukraine on February the 24th and subsequent collapse of US-Russia relations to a new post-Cold War low. In her closing statement, Griner told the judge directly, "I know everybody keeps talking about political pawns and politics, but I hope that this is far from the courtroom." Her lawyers had called for leniency, but Russian prosecutors were seeking a 9.5-year sentence and hefty fine. In the end, she was sentenced to 9 years and ordered to pay 1 million rubles, roughly $16,500. We don't know how long Brittney Griner will spend behind bars because US diplomats are pushing hard for a prisoner swap. Since the sentence was passed, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has told reporters that Moscow is ready to discuss this topic, but within the framework of the channel that has been agreed by the presidents, and not through what it calls megaphone diplomacy. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Washington would engage with the Kremlin through the established diplomatic channels. Blinken says that the United States has already made a, quote, substantial offer to secure Griner's release and the release of ex-Marine Paul Whelan, who is also imprisoned in Russia. Media reports suggest that the US is willing to exchange the pair for notorious Russian arms trafficker Viktor, nicknamed the Merchant of Death, who is serving 25 years in an American prison. Despite relations between the two countries being close to an all-time low, a prisoner swap is certainly possible. In fact, in April this year, Russia released another US Marine, Trevor Reed, from Russian prison in exchange for a Russian pilot jailed in the US. Okay, so that's the biggest story of the day, but there's a lot more going on around the world. So here's a rundown of three other stories. We start this section today by looking at the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where deadly protests have occurred against the UN peacekeeping force that has remained in the country for more than 10 years. In essence, the population blames them for not being able to keep the peace and for not protecting them from armed gang violence. As a result, huge protests have taken place, which has led to, so far, 36 fatalities. The Congolese government has stated that the spokesperson for the UN peacekeeping force made indelicate and inappropriate comments which stoked tension with the population. In light of these incidents, the government has said that they will reassess the mission's withdrawal plan in light of the protests. This is something the peacekeeping force has agreed to. There's more on the way, but be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to make the daily briefing part of your daily routine. Or just search for us on your podcast app to listen along. Yesterday, the Bank of England announced a widely expected interest rate hike. With inflation expected to soar, the UK Central Bank rose its base rate by 0.5% to 1.75%, the biggest hike in 27 years. And whilst an interest rate hike is pretty big news by itself, the warnings and protections the bank published were even bigger. According to the Bank of England, the UK will shrink in the last quarter of this year, i.e. September through December, and then keep shrinking for the entirety of 2023. This 5-quarter-long recession would be the longest since the 2008 financial crisis and as deep as the recession in the 1990s. Inflation will also, according to the bank, peak at just over 13% in quarter 4, more than 6 times the 2% target the bank is required to maintain. Inflation will also remain above 9% in a year's time, returning to target sometime in 2024. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, the world leader who undoubtedly sounds the most like Gru,
but we have a different future in mind. The globalists can all go to hell. I have come to Texas.
yesterday addressed Republicans at their CPAC conference. It was only a couple of weeks ago that he caused huge controversy at home and abroad by claiming that Hungarians do not want to become peoples of a mixed race. On the back of this statement, one of Orban's longtime cabinet advisors resigned, calling him a complete Nazi. In the speech, Orban doesn't actually address this scandal, although at one point he does say a Christian cannot be a racist, a likely allusion to it.
Don't worry, a Christian politician cannot be racist.
He also used the speech to criticise globalism and pushed for a fight against it, saying, "We must coordinate the movement of our troops because we face the same challenge." Economic problems weren't his only focus, though. He also criticised gay marriage, saying that he wants less drag queens and more Chuck Norris. That's all we have time for on YouTube today, but if you want to see our discussion of just why ex-German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder is continually in the news and continually under fire, then watch the extended ad-free edition of the Daily Briefing over on Nebula. Nebula subscribers not only get everything you've already watched ad-free, but also an extended edition of the show every single day, available to watch on Nebula or stream on your podcast app of choice. So if you want to support the channel and get a more extensive daily briefing every day, you'll want to sign up. And there's good news. Our friends at CuriosityStream, the streaming service which offers some of the best documentaries, is offering a deal whereby you can get both platforms, CuriosityStream and Nebula, for less than $15 a year. That's all the best documentaries you could want on CuriosityStream, and then more TLDR on Nebula, including the extended briefing, other full exclusive TLDR videos, and it's always ad-free. Click the link below to get both services for less than $15 a year and support the channel.